There was a time when Boeing was the icon of engineering, a real symbol of American innovation. People used to have a saying, if it's not Boeing, I'm not going. But lately, the headlines have been filled with emergencies, tragedies, and a really deep crisis of trust. So how did a giant of aviation fall so far, so fast? Let's get into it.
That right there, that was the chilling radio call from the cockpit of Alaska Airlines Flight 1282. It is the kind of thing no passenger ever wants to imagine. Mid-flight, a piece of the airplane just disappears. But that single moment of absolute terror, well, it's really just the tip of the iceberg, revealing years and years of problems hidden just beneath the surface.
Okay, just picture it. You're on that flight, 1 minute you're getting comfortable, the next you are staring out at the night sky through a gaping hole in the side of the plane. And this wasn't some old beat-up jet. This was a brand new Boeing 737 MAX. So the real question here is, how on earth did we get to this point? How did a company famous for its incredible engineering end up with missing bolts on a new plane?
To really understand what's happening now, we have to rewind a bit. Boeing's story is one of a really dramatic cultural shift, where the relentless chase for profits started to completely overshadow a legacy of engineering pride. For decades, Boeing was just synonymous with quality, with innovation. This was the company that gave us the iconic 747, the queen of the skies, a plane that totally revolutionized air travel and made the world feel smaller. Flying on a Boeing with an act of trust. But that trust, it started to crumble at a very specific point in time.
For most of the 20th century, Boeing was just on top of the world. But this timeline shows a really clear turning point, the moment that critics always point to, 1997, the merger with its rival, McDonnell Douglas. And look, this wasn't just a business deal, it was a culture clash that would completely change the company's entire mission.
See, the old Boeing was all about engineering. It was based in Seattle, right where the designers and the builders were. But after the merger, the new Boeing took on McDonnell Douglas's profit-first mentality. They moved the headquarters to Chicago, physically separating the suits in the boardrooms from the engineers on the factory floor. The focus it shifted from building the absolute best planes to delivering the best returns for Wall Street.
And if you think this was some kind of accident, well, listen to this. This quote from Boeing's own president, Harry Stonesiper, makes it painfully clear. The change was on purpose. The goal was to run Boeing like any other business, putting the bottom line first. But as we're about to see, an airplane isn't just any other product.
And this new corporate culture, it had direct and unbelievably tragic consequences. The story of the Boeing 737 MAX isn't just a story about a software bug. It's the story of a whole chain of decisions driven by cutting costs and caving to market pressure.
So Boeing was facing intense competition, and they rushed to update their classic 737 with bigger, more efficient engines. But that changed the plane's aerodynamics. So instead of a really expensive redesign, they came up with a software fix, MCAS. You can think of it like a hidden co-pilot that you don't even know is there. And its main purpose was all about money. Make the new plane fly just like the old one so airlines wouldn't have to spend millions on new pilot training.
Okay, let's break this down. The new engines could make the plane's nose tilt up too high, so MCAS was designed to automatically push it back down. But here it is, the fatal flaw. This incredibly powerful system, this hidden co-pilot, was getting all its information from a single, failure-prone sensor. And the worst part, the part that's just so hard to believe, Boeing deliberately hid MCAS from the pilots. They removed it from the manuals to keep up the illusion that no new training was needed. This is the human cost of those decisions. A single faulty sensor triggered MCAS on 2 different flights, Lion Air 610 and Ethiopian Airlines 302. The pilots, completely unaware of the system that was fighting them for control, couldn't stop the planes from going into an unrecoverable nosedive. 346 people lost their lives.
But the 737 MAX tragedies, as horrific as they weren't an isolated incident. They were really a symptom of a much deeper problem, a complete systemic breakdown in quality control and regulatory oversight that had been festering throughout the whole company.
This wasn't just one mistake. It was a terrifying pattern. We're talking about debris left near electrical wiring, which could cause a fire in the air. Loose parts found in hundreds of brand new aircraft. Critical engineering work being outsourced to contractors paid as little as $9 an hour. It got so bad that some Boeing technicians admitted they wouldn't fly on the very planes they were building.
So you have to be asking, where were the regulators? The Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, is supposed to be the watchdog here. But over the years, because of budget cuts and a change in philosophy, the FAA started handing over more and more of its safety oversight duties to Boeing itself. The company was basically allowed to grade its own homework. This quote from a former Boeing employee, it's brutal, but it really captures the frustration people felt inside the company. It points to a culture where engineers felt their work was being compromised and the regulators who were supposed to be in charge just weren't up to the job.
So why would a system like this ever stay in place? Well, as always, you gotta follow the money. Boeing and its key supplier have spent over $65 million on lobbying in just the last 4 years, and all that influence helped create an environment where safety rules could be watered down and a flawed plane like the 737 MAX could be fast-tracked to market.
So after everything that's happened, Boeing is now under an intense microscope. But the biggest question is still out there. Can it ever get back the trust of the public, the airlines, and even its own employees?
You'd think after all the tragedies and the public outcry, things would have changed, right? Well, a brand new report from 2024 found that the deep, fundamental cultural problems are still there. There's a huge disconnect on safety. Employees are still afraid to speak up about their concerns because they fear retaliation. And if the people building the planes don't feel safe speaking up, how can any of us feel safe flying?
So when you step back and look at the whole picture, is Boeing just an outlier, or is it a symptom of a much larger problem? When you see the culture shift, the captured regulators, and the incredible financial pressure, you're left with a really unsettling question. This might not just be the story of one company's fall, but a warning about a system where the safety of millions of people can take a back seat to the value of a stock.